Welcome to the journey. This is Reverend Bobby, and today I have my friend with me, Reverend TC, whose extended hand ministry I worked in for like 18 years. Wow. How are you this morning, Reverend TC?
I'm good, Reverend Bobby. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Why don't you give people a snippet about who you are, and because everybody don't know you and stuff, just give them a little bit of who you are and what you about, and what you do.
Okay, then. Well, I'm Reverend Bobby Matisse Jackson. Everybody calls me TC or Reverend TC. I grew up in Chicago in the Bronzeville neighborhood, but I was actually born in Detroit. So I'm dual here. So I grew up in the Bronzeville neighborhood, as I said. My grandparents were Butterbeans and Susie. You know, the comedy team that
They
made a
were a
way when it
famous
wasn't any way.
vaudeville act. Yes.
Yes, indeed. They had a famous vaudeville act. But Butterbeans and Susie were my grandparents. And as you said, I grew up in Bronzeville when we didn't know what Bronzeville was. But now, it's very, very important that we do know, because that was humble beginnings for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So after I grew up in Bronzeville, I moved out of there to 58th and Calumet, as a matter of fact. I moved there, and from there, I went to Roseland. And as a matter of fact, I was in Roseland when there were no blacks in Roseland. I was the second black family on my block. And as time went on, I had children, and now I have three grown children, and I am a great grandmother, not just a grandmother, but a great grandmother.
A great grandmother and a great woman. Amen. They kind of go
Uh,
together. Go
great,
ahead.
great grandmother. So after that, I moved on to a career, and I have been a legal secretary for at least 30 years. I really enjoyed it. I worked in the corporate world. I worked in the legal field for a long, long time. And then by that time, I said, well, I think I'm going to retire. I was married. My husband passed away, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to retire. Well, as you know, Reverend Bobby, that didn't last that long. And so after that, I got bored and I didn't know what to do. So then my career took another turn. And I then decided, oh, I got to do something. I mean, what am I going to do? So I stuck with my legal field, and I went to work for the city of Chicago, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I only was going to do it for a couple of years because I didn't have anything to do. But then I liked it. And a couple of years turned into 10 years that I worked for the city of Chicago. And like I said, I enjoyed every moment of it. Well,
But those 10
meanwhile,
years went so fast. I remember, of course, because I was around, but it started kind of like just a thing, and you was thinking, oh, this is something to do, and oh, yes. And then all of a sudden, 10 years have gone by. Time flies, don't it?
time flies when you're having fun, is what they said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
So, like I said, the years just went by, and the next thing I know, the person that I was working for decided that she wanted to retire as well. So everybody left except maybe a couple of people. She retired, we retired, but I still had my extended hand ministry, which I'm going to talk about for just a couple of minutes. Back in 1998, which seems like a long time. I was going to a church by the name of CUT, where it was Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. And when I left CUT,
I know that place some kind of way. I just can't put it together. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I left CUT, and then I decided that I wanted to help the homeless. Don't ask me why. So one Thanksgiving,
Because
my
you're a nice
daughter,
lady.
yeah, tell me about it. My daughter, my husband at that time, and myself decided that we were going to take leftover Thanksgiving dinner down to the homeless. Now, at that particular time, the homeless was living under Lower Wacker Drive. This is when I decided that, I'm going to do something different. I want to make a difference. Now, remember, this is way back, maybe around 1998. And so we made the trek down to Lower Wacker Drive and we fed the homeless. And that changed my whole life. And not only did we take food, I got a chance to speak with some of the people that was living down there. And I had a whole different concept at that point of what it meant to be homeless. Because see, not everybody down there that was homeless wanted to do something different. Some people wanted to be there.
Put a pin in it right there, because it was a whole different experience with homeless. They might have been homeless and not anywhere like, stable, but man, they was from all kind of walks of life, veterans, substance abusers.
That's right.
Ex offenders, and then just people with a little bit of mental stuff, and then just regular people that wanted to be out there, and they was all out there. How did you, number one, how did you come up with that, and how did you like doing all of that you did it for a lot of years?
Well, I came up with it, like I said, because one Thanksgiving after my family had eaten, I had a lot of food left over. And I was raised in a generation where you just didn't throw food away. Yeah. And I hated to throw all of that food away. So that started the idea of me going down to where the homeless people were and just giving them the extra food that I had. And so when we went down there, I had a chance to talk to some of the people. And, a lot of people just thought that homeless people were just poor people hanging out on the street, nowhere to go. But after conversations with a lot of those people, I found out that many of them wanted to stay there. I talked to people who had degrees. I talked to people who their families had told them they could come and stay with them. But they didn't want that. And I was really, really surprised because like a lot of people, I just figured they were down there, with nowhere to go and this, that, and the other. But a lot of the homeless people were happy the way that they were. They didn't want to go stay with people. They didn't want to check into the facilities that were available at that particular time. So that started me and my family to going on a regular basis. And that was how Extend a Hand took off.
Well, I know as the ministry took on a life of its own, I know we did a lot of things, some things here, shelter,
right.
Schools, because the kids were considered homeless, in CPS if they didn't have like an address that was their own and stuff, and just providing basic needs and that kind of stuff for people. And how important is that for people so that they could just feel like somebody care?
Well, it's very important, number one, to know what homelessness means. And I had Extend a Hand for years before one of my members, a lady named Yvonne, she was working for the Board of Education. And she enlightened us to let us know that if you don't have an address, you're considered homeless. I mean, you can be staying with relatives, you can do this, that, and the other, but if you do not have a permanent place to stay, then that means you are homeless. And, that's why when we had proms that we contributed to. We had all kind of programs that we contributed to. We helped people, the ones that wanted to find, places to stay. Because now by this time, we had taken off and we had joined other organizations that would help us to find exactly what we need. And just like some of the young people who were going to school didn't have books. We had a book drive. I remember way back when we had the book drive. So this is what let all of us know that had joined me that, you know, you could be staying with a relative, but you're still homeless because you really don't stay at that address.
And
So
that's in CPS, right?
correct.
Yeah. But through the years, we have so many fulfilling things. Now I know maybe I don't know because you're pretty cool. Maybe you ran into some walls and some pushback and stuff. And if you did, how did you deal with those things when you ran into them? Because we did most of this stuff out of our pockets without a whole lot of help.
We did. We weren't a big organization. A lot of people didn't know about us. And as the years went on, things changed as to things that we would donate. I remember we got together, we would donate books, we've donated sheets and towels, we've donated almost everything. But when the rules changed, some of the organizations that we contributed to wouldn't accept a lot of things. And I know you remember that, Bobby, because you went to a lot of these places, even without me, to speak with the people who were head of these organizations and the different places. And when we first started, we could take almost anything. And what we would do, we would call these different places and talk with the leaders and ask them, what did they need?
They need it, right.
And at first, you know, they needed all kind of things, you know, women's articles, men's articles, books, magazines, things to sleep in, clothing, books, like I said, I mean, the whole 9 yards. But then as things, went on, some of these places wouldn't accept things. You know, they went under it's got to be new. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. Whereas when we started, most of these organizations would accept almost anything. And just let me say that Extend a Hand didn't give a lot of used articles. We all pitched in. We would bring new articles where we could. Where we couldn't, we would get some used things, but we would give most of the items that we even bought. Yeah. We would have drives where we would collect different things. School supplies comes to mind, for example, and then we would take those. But we noticed that, like I said, as the years went on, they rejected things that we would give them. And I think that kind of put a damper on a lot of things that we were doing.
Well, I remember at one time, right after, I think it was right after I came back to Chicago before I magically got drafted one day at Edith's house. You was doing clothes and stuff too for a while, but it just got, I think, a little overwhelming and stuff. But you were doing a lot. You were really doing a lot. So did you learn a lot about homelessness and these kinds of things and the agencies and the people and the connections? Because we stayed afloat a long time.
We stayed afloat a good 20 years. Yeah. I think that when the pandemic set in, and after the pandemic, all the rules changed. All the rules changed. A lot of the organizations that we contributed to, they weren't in business any longer. A lot of the places, they didn't accept anything. Some of the places were getting government grants, and when the government grants ran out, then they shut down what they were doing. So what we had to do then was change the way we operated. Yeah. And then after a while, it did get to be much. Yeah. It was a whole lot going on then, and as I said before, people wasn't accepting different things. And as you said earlier, we went in our own pockets to do this, because I remember one year we contributed to kids that were going to the prom. And we went to a school, and the principal and the counselors, they pointed out, some real needy children. Mm-hmm. And we contributed, we got their hair done. We gave money so that the ladies could have clothing to wear. We gave money. and all of that. So that really took off. And I mean, that really made us feel good that we got a chance to help some family who probably was struggling to have prom dresses, get hair done, the guys, that, had needed tuxedos and all of that. So that's what really happened with us, that we were able to contribute. And that made me really feel good. So we did a lot in 20 years.
I remember that because Bill was still alive because he was doing stuff for the boys. He was getting stuff for the guys.
That's right. That's right.
The things. And which another one that I liked, and we really did a lot. Was remember the Christmas when the kids was in the hospital and couldn't go home and have no Christmas?
Yes,
when
yes.
We brought us stuff for Christmas and stuff, and they just.
That was when we went to Roseland Hospital for that. I remember that. And there were a couple of kids that were, like you just said, that weren't able to go home for Christmas. And we took a bunch of toys over there to at least 2 or 3 of them that was in a ward that, couldn't really do anything. But we went to visit, we took toys, and the kids just were so happy. So I forgot all about that, Reverend Bobby, to be honest. But yeah, that was a good one when we did that.
It's like, as I've been finding lately, there's a lot of stuff that you do that people appreciate and those kinds of things. But because it's just so much more than anything else, who you are as a person, we forget a lot of the things, and we don't even sometimes value the things as much as the people do that we did it for, or whatever, however you want to say it, because it was just basically who we are and what we do. And where do you think that came from, Reverend Jackson? Reverend TC, excuse me.
Oh, that's okay. It comes from, in a lot of instances, things that our parents and grandparents instilled in us. See, we don't do things anymore like we used to. We need to go back, as the song says, to the old time way. And the old time way was when families helped each other. That was the start. Families would get together, they would help each other. And then as neighbors, when we grew up in a lot of the neighborhoods, we would help our neighbors. That is during the time when your neighbor could tell you something. They could tell you if you were doing wrong. Your parents and grandparents, they didn't care. But see, all of that, I don't know what happened. That just went out the window. And so now, we don't have the respect that we used to have for each other. Other people cannot help raise your children for them. So this is how all this happened. And I say we need to be resilient. We need to listen to, the older people. We need to listen to some of our neighbors, and we just don't do that anyway. The way that families helped each other, like I said, we need to go back to the old time way.
Well, when we was growing up, it was just, we was involved in a lot of stuff. You had church stuff you was involved in, probably sang in the choir, probably was in the youth thing. One of my boys this morning was talking about the youth acolytes and all those things that we was. And I know, we played basketball and all that kind of stuff for the church, softball for police department. They used to take us around the paddy wagon one day on McDonald's on 87. They let us back of the paddy wagon to go get some food. We was running. All the people back down said, shoot, and went to one side and let us get our food. But that to say, people was involved and took interest in us. And it's a most important thing, because sometimes we can actually see how the lack of that, has affected us as just a total thing. And you think we could do something with that if we put some effort into it, Reverend TC?
I think that if we put effort to it, we can somehow get back to the old time way. But now remember, this is a whole different generation. This
Yeah,
is a whole different generation. The government isn't like it used to be. There are a lot of roadblocks these days that you have to go around to get anything done. Whereas back in our day, you come up with an idea, you float it out there, and the next thing you know, almost it's done. But now we almost have to go through hoops to do anything. But I do think that a lot of things that need to be done, especially with our young people, we can get done. It's just that we got to do it a different way now. We got to go through a different way. We might have to, go through some government agencies. We got to get okays to do this and to do that, So it's just that we got to do things differently. But I do think it can be done.
When you said it's a lot of roadblocks and stuff in the way sometimes to do stuff. You know how my mind worked? There's a sermon, roadblocks to being a decent person, because there's so much stuff, that people be like just in and out, up and down, round and round, and all you doing is trying to be a decent person, help out, do this, and it seems like sometimes the more we stick our neck out to help, the more somebody
that's right.
I know with you sometimes people, you be way out on a limb for them. They be on the limb behind you with the saw and stuff. And why we keep going even with all of this stuff, Reverend T.C., because child, I know I say some stuff that I talk to you and I be like feeling like I'm a blind man. Shoot.
Even the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless has changed, because if you remember correctly, I used to work with them for some years. Mm-hmm. I've worked with them. I went to Springfield with them one year, mm-hmm. but that was, like I said, years ago. But the laws have changed. The way we do things have changed. We got to go through this cycle. We got to go through that cycle. So it's a little harder to get things done. That's what it is. It's a little harder to get things done, because I remember when we would take things to different organizations, we would take clothes, we would take books and all of that. And it was nothing said. We would talk to whoever was the director of these different places, and they would tell us what they need. And the next thing you know, we do a collection among ourselves. And after a while, after people started noticing who Extend a Hand was, they would bring things to us to take.
Yeah.
But now you just can't show up and say, well, look, I got this, that, and the other, because either they don't take it anymore, they don't want it. And like I said, you just have to jump through hoops.
And one thing that I've noticed, and it's been really scary, that as I look at, we're the elders and the mentors and those kinds of things now, and the people who are retiring, stepping back now. And one thing I notice is the people have changed that, we was dealing with, that we had relationship with, and that started to fade a little bit before the pandemic. Because I remember one time we were sitting up in the place on 55th looking out the window. I asked you, how long you gonna be doing this? And you said, Bobby, I don't know. And the pandemic, came in and rearranged, I know, my life, because that was it. I had to say, okay, what else you gonna do now? So now that you're a woman of leisure and all elegant and stuff, have you decided, like what you gonna do right now? I know you doing the just get yourself together and your health stuff right now. That's working good for you.
It's working good for me. What can I say? I belong to West Point Missionary Baptist Church, and we do a lot of things over there. So I'm getting involved in churches. But one thing that I am doing, and I know people are going to think that this is, a little strange, but I do a lot of funerals. Mm-hmm. I've done funerals outside of Chicago. I've done a lot of funerals in Chicago. And that's my way of working with families, because when you lose somebody, and I don't care who it is in your family, whether it's somebody that, is very close to you, it could be somebody that, you're kin to, that's a lot for families. And I found myself going to a lot of funerals. I found myself doing a lot of funerals. I found myself engaging with the families. So, since I've retired for a second time, I'm doing a lot of that. And then I'm, working with my church because I am one of the assistant ministers there. And sometimes, I do what I can there. And I give sermons there while I'm doing a lot of other things at church. So that's what I've been doing. A lot of things at church.
Well, you've always been a person that's able to bring comfort to people, no matter what they were going through. But I got a little funny story about you. I remember when we first hooked up, we were like everybody we wouldn't pray for, they would make their transition.
Oh God, yes, I do remember.
And we was like, they see us coming. Oh, Bobby and TC, they're gonna walk you into transition. And you looked at me one day, even though it was good that we was doing that, and you said, "Child, I really want another job." And so did. What cracked me up is your other job came from like an extension of us, because instead of walking through and praying for them on the front end, now on the back end, you be putting them away. Good girl, good girl, good. What a full circle thing. So, right here and right now, since we coming to the end of our journey for today, me and you, our journey is eternal, but
all the time.
I know, right? But right now we coming to the end of the journey, and with so many things being the way they are,
yes,
you just got a little something to keep our head to the sky, Rev TC.
Well, as I said earlier, when you first started talking, we need to be resilient, especially during this time. And when we make decisions, during this day and age, we need to really think about what we're doing. Before, we could just think of something, and if it sounded good, we'd say, yeah, I want to do such and such and such, and I'm going to do this. But because of things that are going on now in the United States and other places, we just need to think about things that we do. Make sure that we're doing the right thing. And the right thing sometimes not always a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not always a good thing. But as I said, we just need to go back to the old time way. When we watch what we were doing, we would look out for each other. And I think that's one of the things that we are not doing. It's all about me. That's what a lot of people think. Well, I'm not going to do such and such and such because, that don't mean nothing. I'm looking out for myself because such and such and such. But always remember that, other people need things too.
Yeah.
And it's not always just things. Somebody might just call you and say, will you pray for me? They might call you and say, one of my kids did such and such and such, and now they stand to, be going to prison. So it's just not all the time that it's about you. It's about other people as well. And like I said, we just need to help each other. Helping each other is not a bad thing, because you just never know what people need. I always say this at church. We go to church and everybody is hugging each other and everybody is laughing and all that. Mm-hmm. But the same people that you standing next to or sitting next to, you just don't know what they might be going through. So, let's just look at other people too. And let's just go back to the old time way, and we will have done what we need to do.
Well, thank you, Reverend TC. That's a good one to hold on to. And I really like the part where you said, We just need to think things through so we'll
That's true.
know what we do. This is Reverend Bobby. Today on the journey, we were with Reverend Vimatis Jackson, Reverend TC, and from Reverend TC and I, we just hope and pray that you all journey well. Take care, everyone.
Bye.